um, Financially Speaking with Sean. And all of you know who Sean is. He's one of our regulars, Sean Claiborne, Vice President at Wayne Hummer Investments at WinTrust Wealth Management, National Guard veteran, and a Roundtable public policy panelist on America's Heroes Group. And we are pleased to have him. Sean, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. And
Good.
I have to also make a note. So Wayne Hummer is now officially WinTrust Investments. So they changed the name to reflect the changing times and things of that nature. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Very good. So what does that mean?
Well, it just means basically that, we are a wealth management firm that specializes in offering services to people that understand the value of money, but sometimes maybe we don't know how to use it the way that we should or know what to do with it. So what my job is basically is working with families and small businesses to help them grow their assets, protect their assets, and become stronger financially responsible people.
And that means a lot because what we really want to talk about, and of course Sean's been with us, many you people who've been listening and he's been very helpful over the past, and of course veteran National Guard person, and has always been a Roundtable public policy panelist on America's Heroes Group, so he's not a stranger to you. But what we want to discuss today, the hidden truth military families face relative to financial security. There's some major problems with how military families handle their money, isn't there?
Yes, there is, and that's one thing that a lot of people, the mainstream media and the mainstream public doesn't really realize is that they have this idea that when you join the military, you have this great job, you're going to have this great pay, and you have these great benefits, and all these great things are going to come your way. They're going to pay all your school tuition and all these great things, but they don't realize the hurdles and the boundaries that are actually in place to those benefits, and they're not necessarily all what they are. People think what they are, because here in today's world, especially with the new legislation that's been passed by the Trump administration, there's a new word we have to get used to, and the new word in our lexicon has to be food insecurity, because you have a lot of families in the military and also veterans on top of that are actually facing hunger and also facing and using food stamps to get by. So right now there's some new rules to the SNAP program where they're actually taking some of the benefits away from what they call able-bodied individuals. Now, on the surface, it sounds like a pretty decent, wholesome idea. The idea, according to the Trump administration and also Sonny Perdue, who's the head of the USDA, what they're basically trying to accomplish is, in their minds, there's 3 million people, able-bodied single people that are out there that are on food stamps that don't need to be on food stamps. And then there's also this stereotype and myth of the person who's got food stamps, who's buying steak and lobster at the grocery store, who's riding around in a Cadillac and all these different things. There was the welfare queen that Ronald Reagan brought up back in the old days. But so it kind of plays to a stereotype and a myth that there's a lot of people out there that are on food stamps that don't really need it. Now, of course, there are people that are going to abuse a system, any system, and that exists anywhere. And we've all been approached by that guy at the Jewel late at night or at the Walmart late at night, says, hey, I'll give you XYZ amount of dollars if I let you use my link card or my food stamp card, whatever. But that's not the majority of people that are on food stamps. The thing is that people don't realize is that when people join the military, if you look at the map of where a lot of high populations of people that are joining the military, they're in rural, used to be inner city, but now mostly rural southern states, in particular like Alabama, Mississippi, so on, where there's not a lot of job opportunities. There's not a lot of economic progress going on. The standard of living is a lot lower. Okay, so the military is a way for them to join to get a job and actually get some education to try to get out of those situations oftentimes. And for many people, it's a career. The problem is that when you join the military, your pay is not going to be the substantial pay that you think that you're going to get. There's different types of allowances that people can get while they're in the military. For example, there's the basic allowance subsistence you can get for the military. You can apply to get certain types of benefits to help you cope with the standard of living. When I was in the military, to give you an idea, I've got $100 a month. I mean, I think the average pay for an E2 private, something like maybe like $1,200 a month, roughly around that, roughly thereabouts right now. That's not a lot if you got a family of 4 you're feeding with that. And if you get a lot of the allowances don't apply to your family, apply applies only to you. So people don't realize when you get on post, you have a choice. You can eat either at the chow hall and get the chow hall food, or you get basically a meal card. The meal card allows you to buy your food, but it's only about $400 a month. $372 is actually the allowance for 2020. They actually buy food on post. That covers your on-post meals and your off-post meals. The only time that you're kind of covers when you go into the field and you're getting MREs and things like that, and you're walking in the chow line or something like that in the field. But other than that, you get $372 a month for a basic enlisted soldier. You get about $256 a month if you're an officer. Okay, so if you have a family to think about on top of that, that's not a lot of money to actually feed a family. So that's why you see a lot of spouses on food stamps in the military. There's something like 23,000 families that are actually in the food stamps program across the country. And then if you're a spouse of a veteran or a spouse, of a service member, a lot of times your deployments or your duty stations can change. So it's difficult oftentimes for spouses to get jobs because you might be in a certain area for 6 months. You could be there for 6 years. You could be there for 2 years or 2 months. You have no idea how long you're going to be there. So it's hard to build a career to sustain yourself if you're married oftentimes to a service member. So now you're starting to see a trend even too that a lot of service members are marrying other service members. You're seeing that a lot in the military today. So
for that, because they both get it.
Right, and also it's easier to build a family with someone who understands and lives a lifestyle.
Right.
Because being in the military is a lifestyle. Now, the thing about this too that kind of troubles me a lot, Cliff, is the fact that we need to really start to take a step back and look at how the veteran family actually is put together and the challenges that they face every single day. And it's sad to see that, and it's disparaging to understand that there's 23,000 families on food stamps that are in the military currently. It's also kind of sad to understand that there's 1.5 million roughly veterans that are taking food stamps. There's also, you have 36 million Americans on food stamps across the country. 1.5 of those are veterans. So the thing of it is that when you start to take that in consideration, look at what how the military is built and who's actually serving in the military, then you got to start realizing and start to understand, okay, don't need to nickel and dime our military service members on benefits, and let them have better benefits so they can get good housing, get their food and education and their housing under control, so that way they can be a more productive veterans and more productive people when they leave the military. Because once you leave the military, then you still have a whole nother set of challenges to try to transition from the military world to the civilian world. So those are types of things. So one thing people need to realize is that a couple of months ago, the people that are on food stamps already realize this, the standards have changed, and there's probably a lot more changes that are coming to the food stamp system. Originally, Trump was talking about trying to put work requirements in. We have to work 20 hours a week. You can only get on food stamps for 3 months out of the year, or 3 months out of every 3 years, actually, is what the proposal was. Some of those things haven't trickled in. A lot of those things have been voted down. So now I'm not against the idea or the concept of if you're able to work, you should get a job.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Most people would agree with that.
Sure.
Okay, but it's more complicated than just saying, okay, this is what you got to do. If you don't have this or that or whatever, we're kicking you off of food stamps, because you have to look at geography. One of the main things, and you'll appreciate this because you worked in government for many of your years, they're taking away the choice for the states to administer their own guidelines for the food stamp programs. So that's one of the major complaints about the policy, is the fact that states used to be able to administer and have exemptions or exemptions for certain people that could qualify. Now that's being taken away.
Who's taking that away, Sean?
The federal government. The Department of Agriculture says now, okay, you cannot just if you meet certain income requirements. So basically, a family of four has to make $50,000 or less for a family of four in order to qualify for food stamps. If you can basically work if you have less than so many hours of volunteering services and things like that. There's volunteer requirements they're trying to put into the idea. The problem with volunteering. So he said, okay, if you get food stamps, you have to volunteer so many hours a week or so many hours a month and so on, or work or go to school. But if you look at what people are getting, you're talking about the average of $156 a month, and you're volunteering 20 hours a week or working part-time 20 hours a week to get $156 worth of food stamps. The math does not add up. Who will take a job making $156 a month for 20 hours a week? You can make more money than that at McDonald's, okay? Now, and also in certain parts of the country, they're just not the job opportunities that are there that you have in certain other parts of the country. So yeah, to take the ability for the states to basically regulate and administer their own guidelines is a fallacy, because they understand their constituents, they understand their demographics, they understand their local challenges and things. Some places of the country unemployment rate might be 1%. Mm-hmm. You have other places of the country, other parts of the country, even certain areas of the country, unemployment rate could be 40%.
So what we see here, Sean, and you're an expert on this, reports have shown different numbers. Say some 1 in 4 military families are utilizing food banks. Others showcase that $21 million in SNAP benefits aren't really accounted for.
Right. So
what is,
there's hard to really understand exactly how many people are on food stamps. We know at least about 23,000 families in the military currently are on food stamps. About 1.4 in the military currently today. A lot of that, once again, goes back to the idea that you have people coming from poverty that are joining the military to try to get out of their situation, get a better situation. That's a major factor. So it doesn't just go away because you join the military. Your poverty situation didn't just evaporate. It might be more livable for the veteran or for the service member himself. But if he or she is married, they have a family to support on top of that.
What impact does that have if someone joins the military because they're having a problem eating? That's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing, but unfortunately, that's actually
what's
real.
Going on.
That's a real thing across the country, especially in rural and
yeah.
It used to be even a thing in the inner city. I mean, if you go back 20 years ago, but for a lot of different reasons, you're seeing a lot less African Americans and also people of color joining the military. So you don't see it as much as in the inner city as you do in rural America still.
Is that right?
That's
okay.
true. That's very true. Now the thing is that once again we have structural problems with the way our economy is built and where our economy works. And, for example, you have certain towns, for example, that have gone through transitions where they were booming economies maybe 50, 60 years ago that today are not as thriving because the economy has changed.
Yeah.
Manufacturing industry has gone down, for example. So we have a lot of jobs in certain pockets of the country, but we don't have those jobs everywhere across the country. And it's not always that easy just to pack up your stuff and move to a place where there's more employment. So a lot of military bases and a lot in the South in certain areas, they become the main support mechanism for jobs and job creation. They basically are the people that are doing most of the hiring. For Jackson, South Carolina, and you got the Anderson Army Depot. You got Fort Benning, Georgia. All these places where you have low standards of living, not a lot of other economic development going on. The military base is the economic development that's going on.
Exactly.
So they're joining the military to get a good job and also maybe get education and try to improve their lives.
Sean Claiborne is with us, Vice President of Wayne Hummer Investments. And, of course, he is with the America's Heroes Group, and we're so pleased to have him. If you have a call-in number, we have a call-in number, rather, you can call us at 312-374-8130. This is something, Sean, that I really wanted to ask you about. You're giving us, it's not a good picture here. In 2017, a bill was introduced, I'm sure you know, in the House of Representatives to address the food assistance needs, but it was never brought to a vote. Now, the second bill, named the Military Family Basic Needs Allowance, made it through the House, but it was never even called for a vote in the Senate. How can they do that?
Right. Well, this goes back. It's not just there's actually a group called the National Military Family Association. They're worth mentioning because they're the ones that actually champion this and try to get this to the House and Senate. There've been a lot of bills have actually been brought to Congress to try to address this issue. The big thing is we need to start thinking about really taking a real comprehensive look as to what types of services that our veterans are actually working for. Because keep in mind, veterans have put their time in and actually have worked and earned certain benefits and things that they deserve from the time that they've left the military till they say take their last breath. People in the military are serving right now. They're putting in their time and they have earned and worked for the right to have certain types of benefits that they assume they were going to get, and the American public in general assumes that they're getting, that they're not getting. And that's the problem. So we need to start to take a step back and say, hey, okay, wait a minute. So why would you have somebody join the military and they got to pay for the uniform, they got to pay for their own food, they got to pay for this, pay for that, and they're getting basically, if you add up all the hours that they're working and looking at all the money they're actually getting, they could have got a job at Jiffy Lube or got a job at at Walmart and made just as much money or more money. Mm-hmm. When you actually look and do the math at how much time and effort, and then by the way, this is a job that might cost you your life. This is a job that might cost you your health. This is a job that you may not be the same after you come back from deployment because of these types of issues and things like that.
Sure.
Now keep in mind, like I said, there's a lot of things people can apply for. The veterans or service members need to be aware of. Most service members are aware of the fact that they can apply for cost of living adjustments for our allowances that take into consideration where you live around the country. So to make sure that the goal is that every service member should be paid at least 130% of the poverty line. So be 30% above the poverty line of whatever area that they are stationed in. Okay. So they have to apply for that. It's not automatic. So that's one thing. If you don't know about that, you need to talk to your administrative NCO. Sit down and make sure you apply for that type of benefit. Most people know about the basic housing allowances and things like that, the basic assistance allowance. There's also an allowance for family members. So there's a family subsistence allowance that you can apply for as well that will help you get some money for helping taking care of your family and things like that. But these are not automatic, and sometimes they don't always stretch as well as we would like them to. Especially in a certain situation. So.
Yeah, I've been on posts where I've seen some housing that, wow,
Yeah.
it's not something that a lot of people want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is an unfortunate thing. So I guess one of the things there would be, I just say in that 2017 bill that you just mentioned, military family basic needs allowance, how can it make it through the House but never even be called in the Senate?
Well, you have right now. There's a lot of political shenanigans or games or whatever that's going on. I think in the House and Senate. So things are being presented in the House that but it has a Democratic stamp on it, it's probably not going to get through the Senate because it's mostly Republican in the Senate. So vice versa. That's my take on it. I think pretty much once again this goes back to there's too much games being played in our Congress and in the White House instead of actually sitting down and say, hey, let's solve some problems. Let's actually take care of this and do something what we need to do. I honestly firmly believe in the fact that once you put on the uniform, you should have your food, your housing, all the things that would be stresses on you to do your job, to go out and defend this country, should not be stresses for you. They should be taken away because you have enough on your plate dealing with the fact of serving this country and defending this nation. Okay, that's the first thing. So you shouldn't have to worry about when you leave the military what your health care is going to be. You have to apply and prove that you did this and did that, or you were exposed to this or exposed to that. It should be automatic. You get 100% health care once you leave the military, period, because you are making the ultimate sacrifice to join the military. It's sad. You have firemen and police officers that get way better pensions and way better health care than what military service members get, and they're basically signing up to put their lives on the line. Okay, so that's first thing we have to get and understand across the country, particularly our civilian people in our country, because they aren't realizing that this is not how the military. This is how the military actually works. They think, just like you see in the movies or see on TV, your benefits are out the door. You're lucky because you're in the military. I hear that all the time. You're lucky because you're in the military. They take care of you and you do all these great things for you, things like that. But it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, they do think that. We are pleased to have Sean Claiborne with us, who, of course, is one of our members of America's Heroes Group and an expert on finance. And if you have a question or a comment, 312-374-8130 is the number. I just wonder, too, that today was the end of our longest war. That's coincidental. Yeah, today was the longest war. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens relative to what goes on now. The United States, as I was mentioning, is approaching 20 years at war, the longest in recorded history, and which just ended, which is a good thing. So what do you see our servicemen and women, Sean, willingly carry unavoidable stressors because of their commitment to serve the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's time that we take being able to feed their families off their shoulders.
Right,
I
exactly.
mean, that just sounds so damn obvious.
Right, because
You know
people
what I
don't.
mean?
When you deploy a soldier, you're not just deploying that person; you're deploying the family along with it.
Yeah.
So that family is going along with the ride and suffering a lot of stresses.
Right.
You know that shouldn't have to be, shouldn't be on their plate. The
That's right.
spouse of a service
right.
member, whether they're
Sure.
male or female, spouse of a service member, is going through
Shouldn't
a lot of
have to
sacrifice
bother.
because
Right.
sometimes, once again, they have to sacrifice even their careers in order to be with someone who's in the military. Because if you can't even, if you don't even know how long you're going to be in any geographic area, how can you make plans and say, okay, I'm going to get this great job and have this great career when you might be there 2 years, 6 months, 2 weeks, whatever.
True. Let's take a call for Sean. Sean is with us. Sean, hi. You on WVON, America's Heroes
Hey,
Group.
Cliff, how you doing?
I'm fine, Sean. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Sean Claiborne and Sean Gowder, how you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Great, Sean. God.
All right. You know, I'm so grateful for you two gentlemen for recognizing the veterans and particularly keeping the black veterans informed to the different options that we have. Cliff Kelly, Sean Claiborne has helped me a whole lot financially with everything that he says on your show. I'm a testament that what he's saying is true. And I met him because of you and the Veterans Show.
Great.
So you all keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate you both. And Sean, let's make some money, brother. Love you.
Okay.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate your,
I'm
your
glad he's
faith,
helping.
and also appreciate your your service as well.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Yeah, well, that's why we are so pleased to have America's Heroes Group, because, of course, this brilliant gentleman is one of our regular panelists, and he certainly knows how whenever he starts talking, I start listening.
No, it's sad because, like I said, there's a lot of things that are going on in the world that the mainstream media doesn't really talk about, and you can kind of pick things out of YouTube or pick things out online. Food stamps is like a $60 billion expense on the balance sheet of the federal government. It's about $60 billion roughly. It's been as high as about $70 billion roughly, and then now it's about $60 billion with all the cuts they've been doing. They're talking about maybe 700,000 families being affected, or 700,000 people being affected at least for these new cuts that are happening. They've already happened actually, where they're trying to tighten up the bolts on people that are what's called able-bodied individuals, or ABOs as the government calls them now. The one thing that's also that's important to take note is the fact that you have inflation in food prices. So inflation in food prices, but food stamps and things, and even wages haven't kept pace with inflation of food prices. So if you're starting to cut benefits or not increasing benefits to even keep up with inflation, that's another issue. Okay, what we really need to do is stop talking about, worrying about these different these things that divide us, and actually start looking at ways to try to empower people and empower economies in local and rural areas particularly. Because right now we're kind of favoring certain parts and pockets of the economy that we're complaining about, these stereotypes that we have about people that are taking advantage of the system and things like that, which on a low level, very small level, it does occur. But, I mean, you're punishing maybe, for every one person that's maybe taking advantage of the system, you're probably punishing 10. I'm just throwing that. I'm just using that as a round number. I mean, it's hard to support that, but that's probably what you're really seeing. When you go to the store and you have that guy that asks you for money to go buy stuff at the Home Depot and trade guy or two guys, maybe once every now and again. There's not a dozen families taking advantage of the system that you see all the time. Yeah, there's some people that could be doing more for themselves. Maybe some people have some obstacles in their way. They have particularly if you have any kind of issues with law enforcement, or if you've been involved with the criminal justice system at all.
Sure.
Or those types of records will prohibit you from getting a meaningful employment a lot of times. So it's hard to get back on your feet when you've been in jail for 10 years or 5 years or whatever, or have any kind of record. Those types of issues are things we need to address and talk about, because that becomes dead weight to the economy. When you have someone who's not being productive, it is dead weight to the economy because they're not doing anything to help society, and they're actually sometimes bring society down. They may have to go back to crime or return to crime because they don't see any other way. It's not an excuse to go back to crime, but that's the unfortunate consequence of not taking care of opportunities. The idea of that Ronald Reagan talked about, having the shining hill in the city. or the 1,000 points of light that George Bush talked about.
Yeah.
The whole American concept is that we would provide enough resources and tools not because that you were born a certain race or had a certain skin color, whatever, but because you're American, that those things will be available to you.
You're great, sir. I appreciate your brilliance, Claiborne.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All
Do what
right.
I can.
All righty. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.
All right.